Sure, thanks.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm having a little technical difficulty with this, calling up this presentation. It is here, but it is not allowing me to access it. So please bear with me as I reestablish connection to my presentation. Thank you for your patience. There we go. Good evening, as always, a pleasure to be with you. Here is your update on June activities with a little spillover into some activities that took place over the July 4th weekend, because I know you and the audience members are curious. I've been getting a lot of questions about our activities over the very busy July 4th weekend. I'm happy to provide some details on that. I will provide some details in this presentation, and then happy to take questions at the end. As always, this presentation is organized in accordance with our mission, which is to keep Newport Harbor clean, safe, and well enjoyed. In June, the activities of note that we engaged in support of keeping the harbor clean included capturing some video footage of an octopus at Marina Park. In a moment, I will flip to a slide that has a video of said octopus enjoying a sunny day at Marina Park. If any of you are triggered by video of octopi, you should avert your eyes of the screen on the next slide. There are members of the Harbor Department team that were actually a bit squeamish about it. He's living happily, but he's an unusual creature. She is an unusual creature, and I just want to make sure you are prepared for the next slide, which is going to include video footage of an octopus happily living at Marina Park. We also responded to several reports and instances of fuel oil and other contamination in the harbor. Lots and lots of responses that included everything from just taking reports and reporting to the various agencies that need to know about that stuff, to dragging boom out and surrounding contamination, even absorbing contamination on the harbor. Significant improvements have been made at BYB in terms of its cleanliness. Most of the mold on the dock boxes and pile caps has now been removed. That has been a sore subject for the tenants in that marina for many years. We've had lots of complaints about it, and finally something is being done about it, because in fact we did, a month early, take over management of the marina and garages at Balboa Basin, and things are going very well there. Illegal dumping at 15th Street, Public Dock, and 19th Street has been reported to us on several occasions. The haulers have put items aside. Our municipal operations guys have had to deal with some really unfortunate materials that were dumped at the 15th Street Public Dock trash enclosure, and we were asked to review the video footage we have of that location to try and identify culprits. As it turns out, most of the material was placed there by people other than boaters or people accessing that area via this 15th Street Public Dock. And we are making better and more appropriate utilization of the used oil recycling facility at BYB. That facility really is for used oil recycling. It is not for other hazardous materials, but frequently, and not always during our hours of operation at Balboa Yacht Basin, that oil recycling facility at Balboa Yacht Basin is used for disposal of other hazardous materials. So we're making arrangements to better deal with that. The images you see on the screen here are a small motor, which was reported to us as having been dumped at 15th Street. When we heard motor, we assumed it was going to be an outboard motor that had come off user of 15th Street dock. As it turns out, the motor itself was actually part of a small generator operation. It probably came from the land side. Same thing with that small refrigerator that's there. That was dumped inappropriately at the trash enclosure in 15th Street. Moving on to keeping it clean. Okay, here's your warning has been made. Here is the octopus happily crawling along the float at Marina Park. This is clear evidence of improved water quality at Marina Park, which is indicative of improved water quality throughout the harbor. This is a healthy adolescent octopus, feeding well, living well, sunning well, and likely propagating at Marina Park. So there you go. In terms of keeping the harbor safe, there were several instances of unpermitted charter operations investigated and followed up upon. In this particular case, I believe I've reported in the last 2 meetings that there was a particular scofflaw that we were after since 2023. A bench warrant had been issued for him, a criminal bench warrant had been issued for him for non-appearance. He was actually observed in the harbor operating an unpermitted charter. We coordinated with Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Patrol and City of Newport Beach Police Department, who came running when we told them where the guy would be found at the end of his illegal charter. And you see in the upper right-hand corner our colleagues in the Newport Beach Police Department putting that gentleman in handcuffs and taking him away on that bench warrant. Other things done to keep the harbor safe included addressing an electrical code violation in the Grand Canal. A Duffy owner that's on a mooring in the Grand Canal had led basically a home-style extension cord from a patio receptacle on his property out to his Duffy that was fully offshore, and that has now been addressed. So it is not a trip and fall hazard, it is not a fire hazard, it is not an electrocution hazard for any of the ducks or small children that play in that water. We have an approach to improve safety of service providers working at the Balboa Yacht Basin. Obviously, there's a lot of cleaners and maintenance workers, mechanics, et cetera, that work on vessels at the BYB. To date, there's been no code or program or protocol for them to check in with the Marina office and ensure that the city is indemnified for their actions. We've observed some very unsafe methods of providing their services, and so we are in a process with the city attorney's office and risk management to address how we can collaborate with those service providers to ensure that everyone remains safe and that the work they provide is to the satisfaction of the slip tenants. These people do not have agreements with the city. They are not contractors to the city. They are service providers to our tenants at the Balboa Yacht Basin, which makes it a little bit challenging, but we'll get to the bottom of it. We are engaged in Operation Chill out there. For those of you who don't know, a local retailer, let's call them 7-Eleven because that's who they are, has offered free Slurpee certificates that the harbor safety officers carry around the harbor when they observe children generally under 12, usually under 10, engaged in safe activities like wearing their life vests and properly conducting themselves around the water. They are recognized with one of these certificates in front of a guardian or parent, and they get a free Slurpee out of it, and it's been very well received by both children and parents. Paddleboarders, old, young, and canine were rescued during the month of June, and we're happy that everybody managed to get back safely from all the adventures that were taking place on Newport Harbor on those paddleboards. It did get very windy in several afternoons, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. One other item of note was a kayaker flagged us down who was suffering from low blood sugar, and I myself have on several occasions suffered from low blood sugar, and it can be fatal, especially if you're in the middle of a busy harbor and people aren't paying attention to you in a small kayak. So we were actually able to get him to safety, get him out on the beach, and the daughter of one of the harbor safety officers had brought cookies in that day, and so an enterprising harbor safety officer went to the office, grabbed a handful of cookies, and brought it down from that kayaker, who was very, very grateful, and eventually 45 minutes to an hour later, able to pick up his kayak and conclude his journey for the day. In terms of keeping the harbor well enjoyed, there are noted improvements again at the Balboa Yacht Basin. One particular example is worthy of note. I happened to be in that office one afternoon. A gentleman who is a slip tenant came up at 3:45 in the afternoon. Note that time, 3:45 in the afternoon. I will make a point of that in a moment. He came into the office. I happened to be involved in some other activity and said, hey, the electricity isn't working on my slip, what can you do? And I said, there's another harbor safety officer running around with the docks. I will send him over. Please be patient and we'll see what we can do. And the slip tenant had admitted that the electricity on his vessel had not been working for several days. So I could not leave the office because I was engaged in another activity. I was able to contact the harbor safety officer that was down on the docks. Less than 10 minutes later, the harbor safety officer met the tenant at his slip, asked a couple questions, asked if he could come aboard the vessel. He was granted permission to come aboard the vessel, looked at the electrical panel, and solved the electrical issue for this lieutenant. Couple things to note. First of all, had the previous property manager still been incumbent, and this is in June, where they were still contractually obligated still to be there, they would have been there after 3 p.m. They closed up shop at 3 p.m. Their office hours were 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 6 days a week. Our office hours are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. 7 days a week. So, hey, we were there, and we were there to take the concern from this tenant. B, the previous property management company would never have gotten out from behind their desks or attempted to solve such an issue for any tenant there. But we had the entire problem solved for this tenant who had been experiencing that for several days in less than 10 minutes. And then, as you've already heard, the overall cleanliness and tidiness of the facility has been well recognized by our most happy tenants who have come out and seen it. Also well enjoyed and an active superior customer service, we call that platinum customer service. A lost dinghy was identified and returned to the permittee to whom it belongs in the Seafield, who was very grateful and had reported the dinghy as stolen. We did temporarily reestablish the East Anchorage in anticipation of what we knew to be a very busy 4th of July weekend and heavy use of the anchorages. That was also very well received. And unpermitted commercial use of several public docks by commercial operators was addressed and corrected. The images you see there are of the tenant in Balboa Yacht Base and the Got Superior Service. The East Anchorage buoy is on the lower left, and then on the right is that dinghy that was returned to the permittee in the Seafield who had reported it as stolen. Some odds and ends. We collaborated with the Animal Patrol on an investigation related to a dumped gull nest. So a gull nest with baby birds was found at the 15th Street Public Dock, and the Animal Patrol was pretty convinced that it had come off a vessel. So we, again, reviewed footage we had of the 15th Street Dock, and then we took them on our patrol boat to continue their investigation on the likely culprit, and that was a great experience for all concerned. In terms of the what I usually call the most amusing call of the month, it devolved into deafening silence. So this is kind of the antithesis of an amusing call. I actually reached out to an active member of the community who had expressed interest in shoreboat service being provided to the mooring tenants, mooring permittees in the harbor on several occasions. This person has reached out to me about why the city doesn't provide shoreboat service. I have explained on several occasions that there have been several attempts to establish shoreboat service for mooring permittees, and enumerated the various barriers to the challenges associated with doing that, all without satisfaction of the permittee. Turns out there is a commercial operator who is interested in bringing a taxi service and perhaps shoreboat service to Newport Harbor. And he has asked me several questions. We've met on 2 occasions about what the barriers are and how he might get over them. In working with him on his proposal to bring shoreboat service and taxi service and potentially shoreboat service, I questioned him about his willingness to engage with members of the harbor community who are interested in a similar topic and get their input so he is sure to understand their functional requirements. He said, sure, bring them on, we'd love to talk to them. So nearly immediately after my second meeting with him, I reached out to a particular permittee who has expressed interest in this topic on several occasions and invited that permittee to collaborate with the proposer. And I want read into the minutes my specific email to that permittee. I hope, and I'm sorry, this was sent on May 26, 2026 at 8:37 a.m. And to date, I have received 0 response from this permittee. I hope you're doing well. I'm reaching out because I'd like to put you in touch with a commercial marine service provider who is interested in providing water taxi service and potentially shoreboat service in Newport Harbor. Given your interest and involvement in harbor-related issues, I think this could be an excellent opportunity for you to engage directly and contribute constructively to a potential improvement in the harbor. If you're open to it, please let me know, and I'll make the introduction by email. Best regards. Deafening silence. Late-breaking news. I am now finding myself with a need to combat misinformation being published on social media in several outlets by several people, and I'm getting questions by people who read that material and want clarification on misinformation that's being published. As a result of lawlessness on the peninsula over the July 4th weekend, a social media publisher equated the code enforcement activities and lack of response from harbor code enforcement to the lawlessness that took place on land and was addressed by the police. So to that end, I've gathered the statistics related to code enforcement efforts by the City of Newport Beach Harbor Department since 2000, when the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Patrol was in charge of the harbor. And in the years between 2000 and 2017, when the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Patrol was responsible for everything and all activities that went on in the harbor, there were exactly 0 code enforcement matters addressed. They never once wrote a citation for a City of Newport Beach harbor code violation or any other civil code violation. They did do law enforcement, but they did 0. In 2017, shortly after the Harbor Department was formed, we started keeping track of such calls for service, and we were unable to deliver on any of them in 2017 or in 2018. But by 2019, we had resources dedicated to code enforcement, and we began a very active, very well-crafted, very well-organized effort to provide code enforcement advisements, and when necessary, notice of violations, and when necessary, citations, and when necessary, revocations to the harbor community. And in 2019, we took 367 such actions. In 2020, there were 509. In 2021, there were 511. In 2022, the year that the City of Newport Beach Harbor Department was recognized as the Code Enforcement Innovative Program of the Year by the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers, we provided 866 actions of code enforcement. In 2023, it was 965. In 2024, it was 886. And in 2025, 957. To date, in 2026, we have already responded to and taken action on 400 code enforcement potential violations or concerns expressed to us or captured by our own observations. Late-breaking news number 2. Misinformation published related to the city's responsibility in stolen vessel case. You may recall that on September 11th, 2025, a vessel was stolen, a large vessel, was stolen from the Fernando condominiums on the peninsula. And the perpetrator of that took the vessel out of the marina and then went ping-ponging through the A field, the B field, and the BYC field, sinking one vessel and doing damage to 7 others. It was a horrific experience at 1 o'clock in the morning. On several, in several emails, I have been asked about the status of that case, where it goes, why there's no publicity, etc. And in every one of those cases, I have responded with the information that I have available. And the information that I have available is that it was the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Patrol that responded with our support at 1 o'clock in the morning when the incident took place. And it was Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Patrol investigation, and it was their responsibility to follow the case with our support, of course. On several occasions, I have been asked by email, in person, etc., about the status of that case. Here is one of my responses. An email came in on April 7th, 2026 at 8:26 p.m. It is generally the case that I am not on duty at 8:26 p.m. on a weekday. There are times when I am on duty, but I was not on duty that evening and did not respond until 7:12 the next morning. At 7:12 the next morning, I responded to the writer saying, and I want this read into the record word for word so you all know and so the audience knows what the disposition and status of this case are. Thank you for your follow-up and for continuing to share your perspective. I understand your frustration, particularly regarding the limited amount of publicly available information associated with the vessel theft and collision incident you referenced. It was a serious event. and I recognize how concerning it may have been for those in close proximity, especially given the damage and safety risks involved. I am aware that the suspect connected to the incident remains in custody. This is on April 8th. I was at the time aware that there was a there was a suspect that remained in custody in the Orange County Jail. This is a matter of public record. As this matter falls under the jurisdiction of the Orange County Sheriff's Harbor Patrol and the District Attorney's Office, the investigation, prosecution, and any public release of information are exclusively within their authority. The city had no authority. Though we are aware, we have no authority in the case. Given your interest in obtaining additional information or expressing concerns about the handling of the case, it may be worthwhile for you to contact Katrina Foley, who represents the district and has oversight related to county operations, including the Sheriff's Department. And then separately, I do understand and take seriously your broader concern regarding code enforcement and safety concerns on public docks. As I mentioned previously, I will be reviewing the history of the issue with our harbor code enforcement team to determine what additional steps may be appropriate to improve compliance and safety. Thank you again for your continued outreach and for your commitment to safety in the harbor. In less than 12 hours, this constituent had all the information I had on this topic. And yet, this constituent continues to rail against the city for non-response or being non-responsive on this matter. I checked the records today. The suspect they had in custody in April pled guilty to, I believe, 7 charges associated with this incident and is currently serving a 16-month sentence in state prison for this matter. Late-breaking news number 3. In another example of platinum customer service, the Harbor Department converted the owner of an impounded vessel into a customer. And this one is, this one took place on July 4th, and I was involved because I was one of the people responding. The basics of it was an unattended vessel dragging anchor and colliding with other vessels in the East Anchorage was taken, or sorry, was impounded and then towed with Harbor Department resources to Marina Park in less than ideal conditions. To set the scene a little better for you. So it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon on July 4th. It's windy in the harbor. There's a decent westerly blowing. It's probably 12 knots steady and gusts to 17. Towboat US, our contractor for this kind of work, is not available. But the boat has broken loose in the East Anchorage, which is full and getting fuller with people who want to be there for the fireworks show. The vessel had been left unattended and had been documented as unattended for more than 4 hours in the anchorage, and now it's dragging anchor. So, very responsible and capable harbor safety officers take the boat in tow from the East Anchorage to Marina Park, where the impound will be processed. While en route, in challenging circumstances, because this boat is being towed, hip-towed, upwind in 15 knots of breeze, the owner of the vessel pursues, having seen his vessel being taken out of the East Anchorage, he pursues it and then boards the vessel. And there's radio communication between the 2 harbor safety officers, one performing the tow, one on board the impounded vessel, back to base about, hey, the owner is boarding, trespassing, and we've got this impounded boat. We need a little support. We need support landing at Marina Park, and we need support getting this very irate owner off the vessel. So I happen to be on a patrol vessel with another harbor safety officer. We very quickly approached that vessel, very quickly made contact with the vessel owner, who we had no identification for. We really know he was the owner. But we got him under control, got him off the vessel so he was no longer trespassing. And then we explained the process to him for what was going to happen with his vessel and his course of action at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the busiest day in the harbor this year. Once having settled him down, once having got the impounded vessel safely to Marina Park and secured, he was able to make contact with the dockmaster at Marina Park and get the boat out of impound. While going through that process with the dockmaster and saying, well, what do I do now? How do I get here from there? How do I do blah, 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 blah? The very thoughtful and very capable and very customer service focused dockmaster said to him, well, we can rent you a mooring. And the owner of the vessel's face turned a very different shade of happy, and he ended up becoming a customer and renting a mooring, staying the rest of the week on a mooring. The funniest thing I heard during this whole episode, which was not funny at all until the end, was the harbor safety officer who happened to be on board and dealing with an irate owner now trespassing on a vessel in impound said, when it was all over, "When I came to work today, I didn't expect to be repelling orders." And I just thought that was funny and shared with you all. As always, statistics from the month. These were the June statistics, 2,324 calls for service, 2017 of which were mapped, and we had pretty good coverage throughout the harbor. Obviously, July will be a different matter, and you'll see lots of statistics about that. Here are the statistics for utilization of the harbor amenity map. You guys were talking earlier about the map and restrooms, etc. So this is how well the map gets used today. Perhaps it could be better publicized. Perhaps we could update, or I'm sorry, we could improve the utilization of that map in the safety program. Here was our permitting activity for the month of, through the month of June. We're on pace to well outdo last year for everything but brine wharf permits, and that's fine. If people are using brine wharf less than last year, that's fine with me. Here's the same information for last year. And here was the acreage utilization in June. And before you ask, I'm going to go ahead and spill the beans on our enforcement activities on July 4th, because there is a huge amount of curiosity out in the public about it. And then I'm going to give you one coda to it. So, for the day, July 4th, that is Saturday, July 4th, we were on duty from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. And we had a pretty good complement of people on duty all day long, including yours truly. We issued 2 citations. 2. One was for public urination, and the other was for illegal use of fireworks. And then you've already heard about that impound. And that was the only impound we did that day. When we got off duty, there were 8 of us on duty at 11 p.m. on Saturday night. 3 of us were on bicycles. I happened to be one of them, and so I was able to walk my bike off the peninsula through the mayhem that was happening at and around Newport Pier, like between 22nd and 32nd. All the roads were closed, and the traffic was stopped. And pedestrians had to find alternative routes through the alleys. The pedestrians were not allowed to walk on the sidewalks that were part of the skirmish line. I was trying to be one of those pedestrians to get off the peninsula. I eventually made my way through the Ulster Gate Factory parking lot, behind the craft baker, through Peninsula Village, around Woody's, and then I could get back on my bike about La Martinez, and then I was able to ride home. 2 other team members were on bikes and went the other direction. One of them lives on the peninsula, and so he just went east and got back home. One other lives in Costa Mesa, took his bike down to the ferry, got across on the ferry. He had to wait for 2 ferries, but he was able to get across on the ferry and then get off the island. And he got home before midnight. I got home, yes, shortly before midnight. 5 other team members were trapped at Marina Park and had to stay there until between 1 and 1:30 before they could leave. And one of them did not get home until 3 a.m. and was back on duty the next day. That's your update.
Wow.
On time. Oh, and I'm sorry, the coda to that is we will make arrangements to use alternative parking facilities for the next big holiday where this could happen again. Most of the team will park either at Balboa Yacht Basin, Balboa Marina, or the trolley lot, and those of us on bikes will go to Marina Park. We will get our boats. We will go pick up our teammates who have parked in places where they will not be trapped on the peninsula.
Thank you for your report and everything that you do. It's very impressive. Any other commissioner comments?
Paul, I was just going to bring one thing up, and I just want to recognize and express how impressed I was. On Sunday, I was on the back of my boat about 3:30 in the afternoon, and there were 2 young, I'm going to call them kids. One was very young, both on paddle boards. The youngest one, I could tell he was starting to panic, and the wind was coming down the channel, just pushing him, and they were trying to go against the wind. I was calling the harbor department when I saw a harbor service officer in the boat. I was able to flag him down he was way in the center. I was able to flag him around. He came around, all I did was point, and he picked it up like that, and went over there and picked him up out of the water, picked his paddleboard out of the water, went to the other kid, picked him out of the water, picked the paddleboard out of the water, came over and thanked me, and then took them to wherever they're going. My point was I was very impressed with how quick they picked up the issue. It was very, very fast, and I don't know who it was, but it was a gentleman with a black mustache, sunglasses, and he was with a female harbor service officer at 3:30 on Sunday. Great job, outstanding job. That's all.
Rick, any other comments?
I have a couple here for you. One issue I think we need to deal with, and I want to get to a couple of individuals. I went by that Jiffy Lube. I believe that stuff is still coming out of the hill and going right through the drain into the day club, and it's going into that marina right there. So I wish Goldfarb was here so we could talk about that. It doesn't seem like we've got any traction on that. So if you would look into that, I would appreciate it.
Already done.
On the 3rd, I was out on the water and got to experience several HSOs, including Matt Coseyline. So you guys were all on duty that thing. He watched him help 2 people in the East Anchorage that were wind issue with anchors, and he did a great job. And then I had a question: when did we take over the Balboa Yacht Basin officially?
Yeah, we became responsible for the actual on-site management. We actually took responsibility on June 1st. We are budgeted to have done so July 1st. So we got there a month early and saved the city $35,000.
I just want to tell you this. I spoke with a resident. Gil Benjamin was his name. He's a slip holder at Base Marine. It might had to be his first day in the job. Ryan Samper went up and introduced himself, met him. This guy's been in that marina for 5 years. He said it's been cleaner in the last month than it's been in the years that he's had. So compliment to the team on that. And he just said how tidy that marina is.